Yay!
Hey, we are live, yes, and I am super
Hello.
duper excited because first of all, I appreciate Eve from Splendid Weddings Co. very, very much. And second of all, I think she's just a fun person to be around with. And specifically in this time right now where maybe we need some bubbly and cheerful voices to hear, she's the right person to talk to. So thank you very much for joining us today for Piece of the Puzzle. And
Thank you for having me.
yeah, no, I mean,
because we appreciate very much your knowledge, your inspiration, how you think through things, and also how you want to uplift people. And I think that's something what we very much appreciate. And by the way, somehow when we sometimes talking from time to time, we feel also a little bit our European roots. So we have understanding without talking a lot about things, right?
yes, but today we want to talk.
Yeah.
And we want to hear, obviously, more about Splendid Weddings generally. So what have you done before? Or maybe some of the people who do not know exactly where you're based, what you're doing, which clientele you service. But most definitely also, what are you going through right now? And we see flowers in the back. So what meaning do you connect with flowers? And I know you have also a little bit of a different background, which I think helps for you personally also to understand the situation that everyone is going through from a different perspective. But if you can share that, we would just be very appreciative.
Yeah.
Cool. So my name is Eve. I'm actually from Russia. I was born in a place called Uzbekistan. If you don't know it, well, I was born in Uzbekistan. It's sort of an Asian part of ex-Soviet Union. And my parents, I mean, they were just the biggest adventurers ever. They got a job when they were young in Siberia. They actually applied for it. They didn't get sent. They wanted it. And for a good few years, we lived in Siberia. And I've seen the Northern Lights. I've seen the snow. So when I was little, my whole life was about traveling. I would go to my gran. I would stay with my gran for a lot because, the climate, Siberian climate is not really great for children. So I spent a long time with my gran, and my mom and dad were in Siberia. So when I was a little bit older, about 6 or 7, that's when I went and I joined them, and I also lived in Siberia. And then at a certain time, my mom's health deteriorated due to, the climate. And they started looking at coming back to Uzbekistan, which got the most beautiful climate. And I think my love for flowers actually started there because my gran had this massive, beautiful house. We had a lot of roses. She loved roses. We had sort of, cherry blossom trees and apple blossoms in spring. So for me, the love for flowers just goes back to my childhood. And my gran would always tell me how I would go and I find these bunches and I would always arrange them. And it just went way back. I never really thought about it until recently, when you look back at your photos and you think back to your memories. And then my mom always used to say, I live in Africa. And for somebody who was born in Uzbekistan and even lived in Siberia to say, I'm going to live in Africa, people thought she was crazy. And they did. My mom and my dad, they came here in 1994 for a business trip, and they saw Mschlange. They stayed at Oyster Box, and they woke up there the next morning. They came at night. And then when they saw the Indian Ocean, and they just decided, this is the place where we're going to live. And a month later, we moved to South Africa. It was on the 2nd of April, 1994 that we came to South Africa. So...
Wow.
So
So we are just like, wow.
Yeah. And so that's how it went. And then I went to school here, and then I met my husband, and my husband and I have been together for 22 years. It sounds like a lot, but at the same time,
you're so young. I can't even believe
yourself.
Yes.
We were very young when we met.
No, I'm always saying you was old enough to meet him.
Yes, I was. And so I came to Joburg for my husband. I studied psychology. I never, ever, ever thought about weddings or flowers or anything. I was working with my family. I was working in the family business. And then my mom unfortunately got quite sick, and she passed away in 2007. And that's where my life, I think, changed a lot. That's where it was like a different, I came to kind of a crossroad in my life to say, do I carry on with my family? Do I go back to psychology? Or do I do something completely different? And that's where weddings came up. And I don't even remember how it was. I made lists, and my parents were actually very involved with the government in 1995, 96, and they were actually the people who organized the first trip between South African government to Russia. And the trade relations started in those days. And I was 15 or 16. I was already translating for them. I was always working for my parents. They were very entrepreneurial. And I don't remember ever when I was not working. And they hosted a lot of events. So not only entertaining at home, so we always had all these diplomats and sports people, anyone who was coming from Russia to South Africa, we were entertaining them. People were coming from comrades, marathons, so entertaining was always a big part of me growing up. So my mom was amazing. She really could just throw a party together like this. And it was my job to make sure that the table was set properly, that the glassware was set properly, that, everything was decorated. And so I guess it was something like the training I had since I was 14, 15. And then they started hosting trade shows. And I had a lot of event experience, not maybe, but I always had an experience of events. But for me, weddings were always more private, more emotional, and very happy. And, I actually realized that a wedding is a kind of a day in a life of any family, where it doesn't matter what's going on. People may be fighting, somebody may be sick, something may be really horribly wrong. But when comes that wedding day, people will dress up. They will put on their happy smiles. They will come to celebrate, and that celebration actually brings people together. And I really wanted to be a part of that beautiful day and help the couples kind of really experience it, because I knew from my experience when I lost my mom, there will be a day in your life where you're going to be so sad and you are going to be really, really down. And to draw on your memories, to draw on beautiful memories, is what's going to get you through the hard times. So that's how, like, my philosophy behind every single wedding is the celebrations, bringing up the family together. It's about creating a moment in life, in time, where everything is just amazing and perfect and happy. So I started as a wedding planner, and then I got my first client in 2007, but she postponed her wedding, I think, 4 times. And eventually she got married on the 17th of August 2008. 4 times. Which was actually really good, because I was very new. And remember, 2007 was the time pre-blog era, pre-Pinterest, pre-Instagram, pre-anything. There was not, like, the Facebook was only starting and people were just starting to connect on Facebook. We're talking pre-social media altogether. So where we are now in 2020, and you have a lot of online courses that you can take, you can attend a lot of, event courses around the place. We had none of that. So a lot of things that you had to do is figure it out, and use your kind of logical business mind to apply to the project, which was a wedding. And I think that was, for me, a big step in the right direction, to see it as a business, always, to see it as a service, not as a hobby, not because I got married and then I want to be in, I think it was such a cool lifestyle. I think when I started my business, it was a calculated decision. I did market research. I looked at possibilities. People thought I was crazy. I mean, when I would share my idea with somebody in, you know, in sort of my family and my friend circle, people were like, but what is that? What is a wedding planner? Like, why would you have that? and it was important to define the role of a wedding planner. It was important to, you know, sort of educate the market. And then I came to the point where I had my client. I actually got 3 clients, but they were sort of getting married in the later part of 2008. But my first client struggled with finding florists. In those days, there were quite a few florist ladies, and they would do white, green, and ivy kind of a look. And there was a standard look that was getting done, and that was it. And my client really wanted bright colors. She wanted orange and red and yellow and brown. And those are the kind of colors that everyone actually made her feel a bit bad about choosing or wanting. And she actually shared it with me over a cup of coffee one day. She says, look, I think all these ladies are really great and I really think their work is beautiful, but I don't like the way they treat me when I share my favorite colors. I know that they're not your typical wedding colors, but these are my favorite colors, you know. And if you go to her house and you see the way her house is decorated, it had a lot of brown tones. There was red, there was orange, there was artwork. And I think this is when our clients started to question, why can't I have my color? Why do I need to go with white and green?
I bend myself just for the industry. Yes,
And
exactly.
by the end of the day, the client is paying for whoever is doing the job, you know, to do a service that is for the client and not for the service provider. And I think that's always something that a lot of people, they have a big misconception that why are they doing this? This is not because they are doing it for themselves. The job is to be done for the client.
Absolutely. And I think that was a huge turnaround in the industry worldwide, and definitely in South Africa. And I ended up doing that wedding, and it was not, I mean, if you look at it now, you kind of cringe. And but for me, it was a huge success because I went and I borrowed some vases from a hiring company. I went to the flower market. I made my mark, and she really loved it. And we ended up doing the wedding. And I promise you, it was myself. And at that time, I had a friend, and we did it. We didn't know what we were doing. Honestly, we worked through the nights. You really don't understand how much time you need, you know, to allocate to flowers, because you're so inexperienced, but you work on this adrenaline, and you end up, you know, actually completing the job. I don't know how we did it, but we did it. And it was a big one. It was 200 people that we ended up having. So it was 20 tables. And I didn't start with, like, say, 50 people or 60 people. I started with 200 people. And I remember being exhausted. I remember just operating on some kind of different level. And after you kind of get a bit more sleep and you look back and you think, oh, wow, okay. And I remember I was driving a little 3 Series BMW. I thought I was so cool. You know, I was like 26 or 27. And I arrived to the flower market and I look at all the boxes that they have for me that I ordered. And I'm just like,
oh my God.
What am I going to do? Get them home. And luckily my husband had a 4x4 where all the seats were going down flat. Yes. So we had to go and fetch the car from his office, swap cars, go back to the flower market. Somehow we shoved those boxes in. It was hectic. And then luckily the venue allowed us to work and set up the day before. It was at Toadbury Hall. And we got there and we saw how many bowls we had to do, because the hiring company then delivered all the vases and all the bowls to the venue. We started soaking the oasis, and I think we started as we got there at about 12 o'clock. And once we prepped and soaked the oasis and kind of got ready, I think it was 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And now the wedding was the next day. And we realized, oh my word, we actually are in trouble. And somehow how we were shoving those flowers in, and it was just the two of us, but somehow we got it done. And then so that was my first wedding. It was quite traumatic if I actually look back at it now, but it was because we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't plan. And this is for anyone who's listening now. And if you are thinking of starting with flowers or going into flowers, we can share these kind of experiences because there was nowhere to learn. Okay, so there was nowhere to actually learn, and we had to figure it out and get better and better and better. But the newcomers to the industry have a massive advantage. They can learn from us. They can learn from online courses. They can come to workshops. They can attend schools. And where somebody like myself or another trainer will actually explain why you need to plan ahead, how you plan ahead. So you don't make these kind of mistakes, because you really shouldn't be making these mistakes given the amount of information out there.
And you don't have to reinvent the wheel, you know. I mean, it is like someone has walked that path already. So you can actually go and have a very comfortable knowledge base and just already start 3 or 4 steps ahead of everyone who didn't have the possibility to actually turn to someone to say, how does that work? How are you doing that? And then just already
and your first events can be better quality. Your first set of events that you are going to produce are going to be so much better than what I've produced at my first, second, or third, or fourth wedding, And I think our clients, they also know that with every single wedding, you get better, And it's not to say that if you're starting off, you should feel intimidated. I think that if you're starting off, you should do your best. You should ask for help, even if it is picking up the phone and myself, been in the industry for a while, able to help you. That's very important. Don't feel like you shouldn't be asking for help. Don't feel like, because at the end of the day, it's a wedding. You don't have any do-overs. You have one chance to make an incredible day for somebody. And you have to appreciate that if you're in this industry, you have to understand you have one day. There are no do-overs. And you have to really be prepared.
Hold on 1 second, because I think this is very important, because here also I think our personalities come in very significantly, because I do believe the only way also how you can actually reach out is to talk and communicate. And in the industry, I think this is so super important, whether it is a mentor, whether you're going on webinars or training, or whether you go and subscribe to some sort of course. I think it is super important to reach out to other people and to listen, and basically to exchange also your concern with someone's experience or knowledge. And I think generally, in the industry of South Africa, at least, there's not a lot of information going from one person to the other. So I mean, I applaud you generally. I mean, I know you're sharing your experiences with a lot of people. You are in the forefront of South African event industry leaders, and I think you're taking matters under your wings with also other people. But I think it's just necessary that this exchange is happening, and that people also who start now maybe considering doing events or flowers are not afraid to reach out, and ask those questions, because we all started somewhere. I mean, we have an event.
While you were talking, I was thinking about my first wedding that I have done, and I was just same way hopeless. It was overwhelming when I realized what this all actually means.
What needs to go into a wedding?
Yes, exactly.
Because, I mean, you see it. You are a guest at the wedding, but by the end of the day, if you are planning a wedding and if you're doing the flowers, it's a completely different story. Plus the time, And I think specifically also for people who start new, they want to do everything on their own. But this is not right. I think from the start already, the learning that we have is already, I can tell you, it's not right to try to do everything on your own from the beginning, because you either have a lack of time or knowledge, because you cannot do everything and you cannot know everything.
Yeah.
But you can try to reach out to a broader audience and people that you know and that you maybe can approach and say, can you help me on that wedding?
But this is also this is also not the one way. There is the one side that people are open to talk to someone that they think they can gain knowledge or they can get help. But there is another side that also affects all of us. If someone is asking you for help, for support, for being a freelancer, maybe as a florist on your events, be open enough to say yes. But that is a very big point here. What I recently spoke, and I met an American hotel florist in Cape Town. She was traveling the world for about 7 months, and she was traveling and working. So she started reaching out to people from every country that she traveled to, and wanted also, obviously also to finance the travel, wanted to freelance for different events. Yeah.
Yes.
So she traveled the whole world, even in other African countries, not having a problem to freelance. But she could not find one company in South Africa that wanted to let her freelance. And I mean, she was.
You know, it's a huge problem. It's so. You know what? Can I tell you something? So when I started, I had to be a designer and a coordinator because there was nobody else who was in the industry to then help out, or who was on that level, or I could rely on. Yes, later on it changed, and I think a lot of people started in the same way. So you kind of get confused that, you know what, you don't have to wear all those hats. You can be, sorry, that's my dog. Sorry. So you can be a business owner. So you can be a business owner, and you can have coordinators working for you, and designers working for you, and florists working for you. You can be just a planning company and offer just the planning services and work with a designing firm, the company that is specializing in just the design and production and floral kind of services. You can also be just a producer, as in you will produce the weddings, you don't care about planning, you so many choices. I think somewhere down the road, some people got stuck in the idea they must do it all. And maybe it was just a habit because that's how we just were used to it, and we didn't have any kind of other ways. It could be an ego because in some ways, like, oh, you're not doing your own flowers. Oh gosh. At one stage, I remember, I think I was probably one of the first companies in Joburg starting to use freelancers, and I was bringing people into my jobs because I could not and I did not want to employ them full time. And a certain florist of a certain level would require kind of salary that was just not feasible if you're not working consistently every single weekend and you have like 3 or 4 events. It was just not my company. I specialize in a different type of service. But I started bringing these freelancing florists on board, and I know people would speak behind my back and say, oh, she's not doing her own flowers. So what? I designed the wedding. I came up with a concept. These are my floral recipes, but people are working under my command to produce the volume required, because floristry is mathematics. It's time. What is your capacity? And what needs to be created? So if you know that you yourself cannot do everything, and the quality of your wedding will never grow if you don't actually have extra set of hands, because you're not maximizing the time.
How much two hands can actually do. And I think I just wanted to say Karen Leroux is actually a very loyal follower of our sessions, and she made some comments. And first of all, that she loves you and she appreciates you as one of the most respected planners in South Africa. And also, she says freelancing is so difficult in South Africa. That's changed the attitude towards floral freelancers like myself. We are professional florists, floral stylists, and it's time our voices should be heard. And I think that is really, really
Absolutely.
right. Yes,
Absolutely.
and we appreciate that. I mean, we see a couple of people like in the Cape working together, but that's a good start. I really, really appreciate that. But you can actually count them on a hand, how many are, and like all over the country. It's just not enough. And I think it's time, I'm always saying it's time for Africa, and it's also time for our industry to get together. I mean, what we have to hide? I mean, honestly saying, if
we can all just win, you know. I mean, but we personally think the more you can do together, the more people can actually benefit from a job.
We lift up our entire industry.
Yeah. When the big companies collaborate, and I'm talking about, we've done some amazing collaborations with top companies, you can see the level, you can see the next level, because now you have creatives sharing their experiences. There are always people who have a certain edge to you, and you have an edge over them in certain respects. It is about using the strengths of every single person and every single company and what they bring to the table. I think I've done a few freelance jobs myself as either a florist or with my team for other company, and always on the more corporate side of things, not necessarily, I think we've done one wedding together. And you know what, at first it was a bit awkward. It was a little bit like you sort of don't know, you know, who's in charge, or you don't want to be seen as you like challenging someone's authority. But I think that very quickly, if you're all professional, you can sidestep that completely, you know. And with every single job, you can afterwards sit down and say, what could have been done better?
This is with each and every single
somebody else. You should be doing it within your own company with your own, and say, what did you not enjoy? Was it, did we not enjoy the fact that, you know, the truck arrived at this time? Maybe the truck should have come earlier. Should have we done a lot more stuff off-site and then bring everything on site? Because you know what, it's all those kind of things that sometimes when you are preparing for a job and you put together, you know, kind of action plan, it doesn't always work out. You know, I did this one job once. It wasn't even anything big. It was such an easy job. But because of the area where this entrance was very, and there was this desk that was bolted into the floor, and we had to work around the desk. Then there were another 5 people working around us, and everyone was tripping over each other. And it was like, honestly, it would have been better if we did it offsite, brought the whole structure and just shoved it in. It would have taken us like no. But we also didn't know in terms of the risk factor of the time, would the delivery entrance would be closed by then. So the decision was made to rather do everything on site, just because we were concerned about certain logistical aspect of the job. But it really was a flower wall, and like a tiny little bit of like cascading flowers took incredible amount of time. And then it was a kind of job where the project managers would come and like every 5 minutes ask you, are you going to be finished? Are you sure you're going to be done? Are you going to be on time? And you're like, just leave me alone. Let me just do the flowers. And you know, and I think you can never predict what kind of environment you're going to go into. Everything might be planned out, but it's just you get there and you have to make different decisions. So
yes, but if it doesn't matter whether these people are part of your team, or whether these are florists or like freelancers, florists, or any freelancers that you are getting in for the job. This is possible like with your team or without any freelancers. I think the message actually that we would like to spread right now is, and particularly now, because I think we need to work much more together in the time to come than any other time that we had before, to also like give everyone a little bit of the piece of the cake. Because we are all a piece of the puzzle, and this is like also why we actually called it that way.
And it makes our lives easier. Do you know, why make your life hard? Why? You know, I've done those all-nighters where your hands are bleeding and your back is breaking. You don't have to
walk, and yes, I mean we know
it
it all
together.
You don't need to damage your own health to actually create a beautiful wedding. And I think that's very important, because your health is number one asset that you have. You can never get it back. If you damage your back will be damaged forever. You will not going to be able to do the jobs that you need to do. We've seen people get really hurt on jobs, and a lot of times it happens due to exhaustion. And that is because the human power or the human resource is not adequate for a specific job. And so rather, the way I think about any project, rather break it down to more manageable pieces and have more people doing those manageable bits, then do have one or two people responsible for very big things, you know. And I know that from experience, because I've done it. I've been in that situation where you're hating your life. You don't know if you're going to finish, you're at your wit's end, and it's just not necessary. And another thing, you know, I did a workshop in December. It was sort of your floral installation basics workshop, where we created a 6 or 7 meter kind of like wall coming down, like greenery sweeping across. I think it was actually 10 meters. I don't remember exactly, but there was a substantial coverage. We had, I think, 8 ladies, if I'm not mistaken. And do you know what? We made it in an hour, okay, like an hour and a half max. And I said to them, the reason why it went so quickly, it's because of how many hands you have. It was even like, it just went up very quickly. It just, everyone just kind of took their branches, and once they understood what they were doing, it just went so quickly. And I just said to them, you know what, you've got to remember something. It's because you have a team of people just all doing the same thing, and if you do it yourself in 3 or 4 hours. So just something to remember, that you extra hands, and if you have a big project, you need to have extra hands.
Yeah, but also if that also implements another thing. And I mean, I remember that very well. Like, we had a wedding that we did together many years back, where we had a 2-day wedding. And after this 2 days, we were crawling out of the bed. I can tell you, we were not be able to get straight up out of the bed that day. And I promised Alfie, I said, the next weddings, we will make funds available in the budget that we are be able to like employ or hire people.
But that's a good, please can we talk about this? I'm glad that that came up. It's the cost of floral professionals that is always under scrutiny. If we are honest, every single time there is a budget presented or discussions around floral labor, there becomes like this almost like uncomfortable feeling. There's almost some kind of weird vibe that happens. And in a way, yes, it's easy. Well, it can be seen that arranging flowers is easy, it's enjoyable. I have a lot of people that come in as we set up a wedding and like, oh, I would love your job. You must be so happy. And you just like, yeah, sure. Like, I'm just shoving these flowers in. I just want to complete this job. But yes, I love my life. But what I'm trying to say is that people have this perception it's easy, that it's fun, that it's amazing. And yes, it is all of those things, but it's also incredibly stressful. You need to know what you're doing. You should be able to plan properly. The amount of time that I spend on the phone with my flower supplier to ensure that I have correct flowers, the flowers that I need for my floral recipes, the stress is immense. The responsibility to keep the flowers alive and looking beautiful for the wedding, it's a skill. And I think very often it's underappreciated, and it may be also undervalued.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's underpaid, to be quite honest.
Yes.
Like, we are fighting very hard for our segment of the event planning, that we make sure that we make our clients understand that, for example, it starts with easy things, because people know that we sell flowers and we do events, but then they say, can we not just get more greenery? You know, can you not just cut them somewhere from the streets or something like that? So, you know, as if it's not allowed. I cannot just walk around and cut in other people's gardens, but even if it would be, it's time. You know, so I'm not going on my own.
And effort to cut off branches, you need chainsaws. You know, if we all forage, and I do think we need to be sustainable in the way we forage, and I'm very passionate about it, because you shouldn't take from nature what it cannot replace, and it needs to be a very, very ethical kind of foraging approach to floristry.
But what I'm just saying is that I understand, and I'm completely with you. What I'm just saying, the mindset, you know, it's okay, if you can.
It's not free. Do you know what? To forage, even, you need to ask for permission, number one. You also can't have one person foraging. You need to have a couple of people. They need to have proper equipment to cut off and to transport. It's not free.
Exactly.
It's not free.
No.
You know, nothing in life is actually free.
Yes.
Even the greenery that just grows.
What is for free that you have to pay very expensive
on another side. In most cases, yes. But what we are just trying to say is, florists, and I mean, in our capacity as also, wholesalers, so we supply florists. I mean, they are the most valuable people to us in that moment. I think we just also need to raise our voice that there is a lot of people who do a fantastic job, but who are underpaid, or who are also even
do not calculate.
So they offer themselves also in an undervalued way.
Yeah, and which is also very unhealthy for our industry. You have no idea how many, on a daily basis, how many discussions I have about, let's say, pricing. Yeah, when people send me pictures and asking me what flowers maybe in this arrangements, what they need, how many stems maybe they have to calculate. We are very happy to and willing to assist. And then when we are talking about the prices, I'm always recommending between 30 to 50% at least to add on the price of a flower only. That is for
Yeah, so this is just for the
for the flower. But then it comes to labor, and I think a lot of florists really do not calculate their own labor correct.
They cut themselves short. You know, it's they cut their own time and value short by maybe calculating the flowers in the right way. But for their own time, they are not calculating the time that they actually spent on the job and the project. And this is maybe then also, now tying in with the current situation that we are in, maybe a big problem right now for a lot of florists, because they could not keep a certain financial background to themselves.
I'm getting something to drink as well. I think we're talking a lot.
Exactly. So we are always joking when we say don't cough in public anymore.
Yeah, it's a terrible joke.
But where I am coming from right now, and this is ties in the current situation that a lot of florists are facing right now, or a lot of also planning companies are facing right now, due to the fact that a lot of people have not calculated in the way they actually should. They are sitting now in a very terrible situation, because they could not put some of their profits maybe aside for a situation that we are facing right now, because they have undercut themselves in the process of offering their service to their clients.
Yeah. And
you know, I spoke about it at my workshop as well. When I started, and that was 13 years ago, I could go to the flower market and I could buy some flowers, and I'll come home with my big box of flowers, and I could practice flowers. Nowadays, flowers are extremely expensive. Okay, so you can't do the same kind of concept to like train yourself, because you might actually just waste the material and waste your money. And what has happened in the past, we were actually, because the flowers were not as expensive and the demand for massive installations wasn't there, we could create a beautiful arrangement, price it properly, and make money. What has happened as the business developed, as the industry developed, the client developed a bigger appetite for more beautiful presentation, for more exquisite presentation. The florals have now, they're looking on Instagram, they're looking on Pinterest, and they want their peonies, and they want their anemones, and they want like all these really exclusive floral material that we have to import, which means we're paying a premium. But they cannot accept the price of the arrangement. And then the florist goes, but I want to make this arrangement. So they are willing to spend the money on the presentation, create this beautiful arrangement, make their client happy. But the money is not going into their pocket. The money is going into cost of producing this beautiful arrangement. And at my last workshop, we worked with peonies, and we had anemones, and we had imported roses. And just one flat bowl came to something like 3,000 Rand cost. Yeah. So first of all, our market is not 100% prepared to pay the price required for that presentation. The florists feel the pressure to produce this kind of product, and they're not pricing properly. And that's where the disconnect has happened, somewhere where the Instagram has come into play, and the integrity, of the florist was in question, South African florist, because they would say to us, well, why can't you do the same wedding as, like, say, Colin Cowie or Sarah Hayward or Karen Tran even? What can't you do this? It's like, I can do this. You cannot not afford to pay for the floral material required.
Yeah.
That's the difference. But the florists started feeling like their ego was getting hurt. So they were willing to put more money and lose more money as a result in order to just produce something bigger and more beautiful. And so they could actually put it on their Instagram and say, look, this is where the problem has started, and people stopped pricing properly. And for that reason, they are facing big problems now in their businesses, because they were putting more and more and more into their presentation and not necessarily into their businesses. And I do think that's been happening.
Yes, I think we need to make a difference also between, you want to do a style shoot or market your business, or you want to do business, So I think this is like two complete different things. And I think you wanted to just say something about that.
I also wanted to say something, because that is actually one of the biggest problems that out of my experience talking every single day to florists, I always hear that they say, but the client wants, the client said, the client sent me this, the client demands that. I think, and this is a responsibility for a florist in our country and in every country. We have to guide the client. We have to have confidence in what we can do. And I'm not a slave of any client, because a client has imaginations, they have dreams, they have wishes.
Rightfully so. I mean, they are not a florist, and that's why they hire people like, with the knowledge and with the background, like to go either to a planner who has a very good florist in their back, or whether like it is a florist that does also like the planning, or the vice versa. But it is the reason why people, like couples, like hire event planners and wedding florists, because they can't do it themselves. They don't know how to do it.
Yes, and I think a lot of people...
But also it goes into planners as well, because you have a planner who doesn't understand floristry and design, and they will be even worse than a client very often, because they will sell the client this massive idea and then they get a quote from a decorator at like R1 million, like this is your R1 million budget for decorating only.
Yeah.
And now there's a huge disconnect because they sold the client this amazing vision, but then they push the responsibility to the decorator to execute at like 100,000 Rand budget, which
Exactly.
is
But
not
there's
going to happen.
also, if I can just say, it's not the responsibility of the florist to make up for the planner's fault.
No.
So it's like this disconnect, because
absolutely.
otherwise we're going to have a huge problem in the market and like a fight between industries, which is completely unnecessary. And that's why we also say we have to work together, hand in hand.
Exactly. And there's two things that I want to add. The first thing goes into actually, there is a lot of possibilities in like floral wise that I can make a dream come true. And this is what I'm always saying. There is, let's say, a different range of flowers that I can use as flowers may be requested from a client. Let's say, instead of just make it real, instead of a peony, we can get peonies all around the year, but there's a different price for the peonies. Let's say the cheapest peonies we can get locally, which is almost about 20 Rand to 30 Rand in peak season for local peonies. And we can get in a season where like we get peonies from Alaska, which is about 150 Rand or 180 Rand per
and they're gorgeous.
Price. We are talking about
gorgeous. But yeah, they come with a price tag.
So that's the difference. But I can maybe use a rose, which we call peony rose, or a tulip, which calls peony tulip, as a sub, which is a fraction of a real peony, which is 180 Rand or 150 Rand. I can maybe for 15 or for 20 Rand, I can get a tulip, which looks amazing and has the same look and feel. Yeah. And this is, I think, where I want to go on by teaching our florists what is possible and what not. We still have brides that come to us that actually have appointed a florist and they say, listen, I have found on your web shop, you offer peonies. I was talking to my florist and they say, either what answers we get, either they are so expensive, you don't even can afford them, or they are not available. This is nonsense. This is something that I cannot allow to get out. There is always a solution, That is.
I also feel like the florists, but you know what, with the florists, so everyone's works differently. Everyone's floral palette is different. And I do always think it's exciting to expand your floral palette. But I think florists should always be included in a creative process. They shouldn't be just told what to do. They should be in a meeting when you are discussing your color palette, when you're talking about your mood boards. So if you yourself, if you're a planner or a designer, but you don't necessarily have the floral background, or you're not interested in flowers, but you have a florist who either works for you or you hire someone else, that person needs to be in your creative process, not at the end,
this is
but at the beginning.
Also said, there are two comments. I mean, I'm not always reading all the comments, but we put them on the screen that everyone can read it. And then there's something also very, very important I want to line out, and I maybe want to hear like your opinion about that as well. So we learned a couple of years back, like on a very hard road, when we did a wedding and we prepared everything for that couple, including all the service supplier and the cost and everything. We learned it on a hard way that they took our quote and went away. That was it. And we gave them all the details and everything. So at that time, we decided whether it's for flower arrangements or for wedding planning, which we at the moment one roof for our event planning. We are not giving any quote before we speak to the client and make sure they are deciding to go with us and pay a deposit. I think that is something a lot of florists and wedding planner are scared to do that. They are scared of hell to ask for money. But I think if somebody is not committing to me as a company and they don't maybe 100% sure like what we do, why they would accept a quote from us? I mean, for me, this is not, it doesn't make sense. And I mean,
it's not ethical,
and we are offering, we say, I mean, even I'm always saying this a little bit in a practical way. If you call out a service technician when your washing machine is broken, you know, the first thing what they are asking you is you have to pay the call out fee, you know. I mean, we are giving away all our knowledge, all our time, just for the hope of that anybody will like it. And I mean, we make commitments to the clients and or offers that we say, okay, this is our down payment. If you go with us, we use it as a deposit for the entire planning, obviously, then our time is paid. But if you don't go with us, this is non-refundable and it's paid out our time. So what is your opinion and experience in this?
Okay, so in the last 18 months, 24 months, I would say the behavior of the client has changed dramatically to what it used to be before. I found that in the past, you would have a client actually coming in for a consultation. So you have a potential bride, she schedules a consultation, she comes with her mom or her fiance or the whole family comes. You have a consultation, you talk about it, you discuss things up openly. Yes, you talk about the budget, you talk about other things, you send out a quote or you discuss the quote, however people work. But I find that then within a week, you would know if you are the person that they're going with or not. And I feel like in the past, the clients were shopping with maybe 2 to 3 companies. So they would narrow, they will do their research, they get recommendations, and then they will check out 2 companies and then they go for 2 meetings. What has been happening lately is that we're seeing an insane amount of shopping around of the same client going to pretty much every single firm out there, which is actually counterproductive because everyone works really differently. Companies that don't remember who's where is where and what they've heard over here, and it all just gets jumbled up. What has been also happening is that the companies have been also like reserving, kind of being transparent and not wanting to quote because they know this client was all over the show. And we all talk, and I think, you know what, I'm a kind of person that I do encourage my clients to shop around. Please do your research. But when you come to me, your attention should be on me. I've had people walking into my office and saying, oh, which one are you now?
Oh my goodness. No.
Which one am I? I mean, excuse me, do you know who you're sitting in front of as well? You know?
I didn't want to say it, but I would have said this before.
No. So it's kind of, it's you know, or I have a client and I sorry for maybe borderline swearing, but I call them ask-holes. No. All they want to do is ask information. They just want to ask. They're fishing for more. Yeah. They don't have an intention to hire you at all, but they want your expertise. And I think it has been affecting a lot of planners. I think it's been affecting a lot of decorators. Everyone's kind of retaining their creativity because they're like, well, I don't want to give you this piece of information because I don't know how committed you are to this relationship. Right. So I think
let me just stop you right here, because I think this is very important from the point actually from now going forward. Why? Because a lot of people will now going forward also looking like post COVID-19 will be shopping or trying to shop around. Yeah. Because obviously budgets will maybe get lower. People will try to see where can they get the most value for their money. And I think like what is very, very necessary, at least from my perspective, to say is don't lower your prices now, because you will hurt yourself and you will hurt the entire industry by doing that. So,
well, we don't know what the prices are going to be like. I was on another chat with Shepstone Gardens, and one of the listeners have asked, am I going to be giving discounts for the weddings from September to December 2020? And I said no, because I don't know what the market is going to be like. In fact, what my concern is that there's going to be still a demand for wedding planning services, for flowers, for tables, for chairs, all of that. But we might see a lot of companies going under, as in the businesses closing. So there might not actually be as many suppliers available to choose from, but there's still for those services. So that means if the supply is low, but the demand is high, the prices go up because at scarcity of resources. Yes. And so right now I cannot comment on the price at all. We have to see what happens. We have to see how long this lockdown is going to continue for. We have to see the impact. We're going to look at the flowers. What flowers are going to be available? We don't know. And that's something that we cannot even speculate.
Yeah, not even what flowers are available.
I wouldn't be worried about the varieties.
But varieties, exactly. What about the import? Are we going to be able to, I always say to my brides, when people come to me and they're like, I don't want expensive flowers. And the number one thing I actually tell them that since South Africa has started importing flowers, our market stabilized. The prices stabilized. The supply stabilized, and there was actually a really good way to work. Whereas pre-2015, like 2014, we relied on the local market to supply our flowers, and then we would have very like peak weekends where lots of weddings were happening, lots of events were happening, but the flowers were just simply not enough. And we would see something like 250 Rand for a bunch of white roses going through the market. And we would see like trucks coming from Angola, buy out everything, pay in dollars, and us in the local market would sit with nothing. And then once we started importing the flowers, the market stabilized, the prices stabilized. We knew we could have a supply. Yes, we can't always 100% get what we want, but 90% is good enough. And I think it really changed our market. It changed the quality of our weddings. It changed the presentation of our weddings. And we could actually price with confidence to say, yes, we might be 10% over or 10% under, but the weekends, the first 10 weddings will be 30 to 40% over what we estimated. Because that did happen. People lost money on flowers before because the market was so unstable. And now we're going to have to face the situation where we might not have the supply of flowers we need or want or need to consume as a South African market. And we will have to adapt and we will have to adjust. And nobody, until we come out on the other side, can speculate and say what the prices will be like. We just have to wait and see. And for that reason, discounts, I don't know, it's such a hurtful word in the industry for us because we don't get discounts when we are paying rent. We don't get discounts when we are buying fuel to put into trucks. We don't get discounts when we are, going to buy groceries for our families.
No, we're 100% like with
let
you.
me just finally give you an answer on the flower situation. Like we have been talking also the last couple of weeks to almost all of our supplier, like all our farms in Kenya, in Europe, in South America, as well as to local farms. And there's two things. We will have somehow less flowers, less local flowers available because there's local farms. They do not know what the situation will be and how long our local lockdown in what stage will be. So they don't want to go wrong what they have now, that they have a lot of flowers available and nobody is buying them. So I know from a couple of farms, they say they either flowers right now for the next season, or even they leave out a different type of flowers
For a season.
for a season. So that is the local market. Then we have the European market, which is actually very stable because the European, like the Holland flower market, is selling to all over the world. So that is not so much depending on one country.
And flowers are being sold around the world. It's just in South Africa not, but I know following designers and florists from all over the world, they do have access to flowers and they keep on flowering, and you know, you can sell flowers.
Yes, and I spoke on last week, we spoke to one of our farms from Ecuador, and we particularly asked them like how they do now, and will the flowers be more expensive? And they said no, they will not increase the price. However, which is very important to know, the exchange rate is just like at the moment, and I really, really hope it will also go a little bit back to somehow normality what we had before. When we are talking about dollar and euro, about like around 20, we came from about 16. You know, like that is like 25% more what we have to pay right now, like today, for any flower. And also not only the exchange rate, also the transport charges for now. I was asking yesterday in preparation of maybe Mother's Day, like nobody knows for now if Mother's Day is going to happen in the flower year or not. So because there's not a clear answer right now from the government if flowers and floristry belongs to the part which is open. So that is also a clear message for now. I have just like 2 minutes before we started, I sent an email to the presidency and to the Minister of Agriculture to hear what is actually the situation. Nobody at the moment knows about that. So there is a transport, an increase of transport. For example, when I hear that we have to pay about $7 per kilogram for flower transport from Holland, that is about 2 to 2.5 times more what we usually pay. And that is just, that makes a lot of things either unfeasible, or so expensive that we really have to think what to do. So things will go in a better way. I'm 100% sure the more we go along the way. So I think it will not stay, because also the more flights.
But you know, and also just to talk about, but you know, just to go back to the discounts and all those kind of questions, I think what is also quite important to remember, that I think I speak for majority of creatives now, everyone's investing into their own education. You know, there's online courses, there's webinars, and I do some that are free webinars, but I also take a lot of paid courses. So now I'm investing in expanding my own tool, like skill set. I'm expanding my own knowledge. I'm getting better. So you kind of have this whole creative field that is busy upgrading themselves in their own capacities, because I think very often we just don't have time to do things that we wanted to learn, or a course that we wanted to take, but now we do have the time. And I know how people that I speak to in my circle, my professional circle, everyone is, you know, trying to upgrade their own knowledge. They are upgrading they themselves and doing it so they can serve the clients better. So why is it that if we are going to invest into our education, to invest into our own knowledge so we are able to serve, why must we charge less?
No.
And what about all the clients that came before to us and paid us the prices that we asked and respected that engagement and you know, believe that the value of what they've got from us? Why should it be less for the future clients? And I understand COVID, and we will have to adapt, and we'll have to see what's going to happen, and we'll have to negotiate and do all of those kind of things. But, you know, as it is with COVID that we've had to postpone weddings, and yes, in the wedding industry, everyone's going postponed and cancel. It's great. It's great for a client because they are not losing out, but we lose out big time, because not only that we were supposed to work at a specific date, and in the future we were supposed to book another client and make more money from that date, we now losing 2 dates. So we're only making one income, but working, you know, kind of, we should have made more money at the end of the year without these postponements, whereas with the postponements, we're going to be making half the money, but still having the same responsibilities, financial responsibilities. And so it's a very difficult time for the wedding industry. And if we have to postpone the later part, like September, October weddings, and move them into next year, I mean, we're looking at 2020 with very little revenue coming into wedding industry or events industry.
Like the 2020 weddings gonna happen in 2021 are blocking the dates for actually couples that were supposed to get married there. And you can, I mean, you can only do one wedding a day, you know, I mean, it's either this or that. So it's not gonna be double weddings anywhere. I have one
I like
question.
this question. I really like this question. How do you advise a bride who has no idea? Okay, that's always a really good question, because we don't expect the clients to know absolutely how much the weddings cost. And I think it also goes into the type of weddings. And I know it's the most frustrating thing that a bride can ask and then hear back is, it depends. You know, how much is the wedding? It depends. But it really does depend. And I think the best thing is not to be afraid to ask. I believe that a professional decorator or a florist or a planner would be more than happy to sit down and explain the way the budgets work, the way we price things, and explain it to the client that they do understand, because you haven't planned a wedding. We appreciate that, and it is our job to educate our clients. However, it has to be a realistic conversation. It has to be honest conversation, because if you have a client who comes to you and you're sitting in a consultation and you're discussing, you know, this luxury fairy tale, and when it comes to the budget, all of a sudden there is no communication back from the client about how much money have they prepared or set aside. It shouldn't be an embarrassing question to ask or feel like, you know, I think people are so scared to discuss money because
but this is actually, sorry when I interrupt you, but this is for us actually like the second question, not only the first one, because we are not actually going to embarrass the people right now to ask first.
Because we don't want to sound rude as suppliers to say how much money do you have, but we need to know, because then we will be discussing things relevant to your budget.
Yeah, when you buy a car, you also know this is what you have on your bank account available to spend for a car. Either you can afford a Mercedes or you can maybe afford a bicycle, you know. I mean, that is what it is.
Yes, but I want to say something. I want to say something, because in my portfolio, I have weddings from various type of budgets. The idea of a professional decorator is to take what is available and do the best possible job with it. That's where the talent comes in. That's where the skill comes in. But I can only do that when I know how much my client is prepared to spend. What is their range? And when someone says, no, we don't know what the budget is, I promise you it's not true. You know how much money you have in your bank account. You know how much you're prepared to spend. So share that.
Yes.
I've had consultations before where the couples didn't have that money. But you know what? They saved up and they came back. So it doesn't have to be an absolute horrible conversation.
And I think that's conversation. I think the reason why people should hire a wedding planner is because they're doing everything in their power to maximize the client's budget through their contacts, through their knowledge, through their experience, in order to really like help them not to like have the feeling that I need to spend money on the planner. No, to actually get them the feeling to say, wow, he's really saving or she saves time. And through the context that they have, they can just create something that we on our own would never be able to do. And I think this is...
But you know what, if you're a bride and you love someone's work on Instagram, reach out to them first. Don't take their photos and think, I this service provider, but let me go and find a cheaper florist. But taking the photos, and that does happen. We hear about it, we discuss it. So if you're a bride getting married and you are admiring someone's work, reach out to them. Once you know how much they cost, they're like, okay, cool. You know, and I understand that, you know, maybe I can't afford you, but ask for recommendations, because I have a number of people that I refer to. So if someone comes to us and they say to me that, no, unfortunately, you're outside of the budget, I will always recommend people who've come to my workshops who I know are up and coming florists. They're amazing designers, and they would probably fall in within that budget frame. But I also need to know if that the client actually has some kind of a budget, because if I'm going to refer to somebody with a 7,000 Rand budget for 200 people, I mean, I'm not going to be friends with that person either. You know, I'm not helping them. I'm actually wasting their time too.
Yes. You are I completely agree. Exactly. And I think also
we exclusively work on budgets. I mean, that I must say that we do not actually go another route, because it has actually not led us to any positive outcome. Because always when we actually in the past went a different road, that people came and say how much that will cost, or what do you think, like that, then when we came up with the best ideas, then they fall almost out of the chair and they said, oh gosh, no, that is not possible. But better is actually to say, okay, this is my budget at one point, and this is my expectation, maybe a picture or an idea or whatever. And immediately, we as professionals, we can say, okay, we will know. Maybe in the range of a possibility, or maybe no way, or we can adjust it a bit, either in your expectation or in your budget, and then we can make it work. And I think also it is no matter if a florist has a higher labor than another one, even though with the higher labor can maybe work out your budget in a different way, that you can still afford this florist to work on your wedding, then maybe using cheaper florist, I think.
But and also, do you know what? Every company is different. So we own a lot of our decor. So all the table decor, all the decorative items we own.
Yes.
So I could look at someone's budget and say, okay, then let's put it into the floral material, because I can offer something complimentary back. Okay, but it has to be in line with my signature style. It has to be in line with what we have. So if we keep as many things in-house as possible, it's going to be more cost effective to the client. If they come with a very, very strong expectation and they're not flexible, then we have to price the vision and stick to the price. And another thing, in my company, I know for a fact that we are, you know, we keep on innovating. We keep on trying to come up with new ideas how to do things. Even that wedding that I think I posted today, it was done 3 years ago. We were the first to put that structure up in the Four Seasons and create that floral ceiling. And I know for a fact after that, like, oh, so that's how we can do it. We can take the trusses, and everyone started doing it. And you know what? That's how I believe in sharing. I posted behind the scenes photos 3 years ago as we were creating it, because I wanted people to see the possibilities. I do want my industry to grow. I want our industry to grow. And but when you do something for the first time, it's always more expensive than once it's been figured out. And now we have the concept, and the engineer has put in their time and they worked out what the weight should be like, and we paid this person. So you always pay a premium on something that hasn't been done before. It does become more cost effective once we have made the stands that can, tower over tables. But the first client, the one that's prepared to put the money and say, yes, I want it, and I am prepared for that, they will pay a premium. That's something that is very important to differentiate.
Yeah. We had, for example, we had the first flying veil here in South Africa, or actually on the African continent. Yeah. So basically, for a bride to get a flying veil almost invisibly coming towards her from the aisle
towards her, and it's falling actually softly on her.
The idea is great, and I was like, oh my goodness, yes, we all know those from Asia, those pictures, where the veil is coming. But this has been going on there already for quite some time. So a lot of brides got to do that already. But in Africa, or in South Africa, there was no one that actually has ever done something like this. So first of all, to actually figure out the mechanics to do that, and then to find someone
that actually is willing to go this road with you. And I can tell you one thing. We started about 5 months before the wedding, and only on the day of the wedding, we had a successful.
Yes. So, and those are the things, those are the things. So of course it was, it's possible, but I think for everyone that wants something extraordinary, they just need to understand that extraordinary things cost some extraordinary money. Not impossible.
Absolutely.
That's why it's so important to share prices and budget. And I think a lot of also customers, they are afraid. Why? Because they think that we want to try to rip them off. Bluntly speaking, that there are a lot of people who just want to try to take advantage and give as little as possible for as most as they can get. But I believe that when people are following wedding planners, they see what work and what creative results they actually deliver, and they will understand and know that whoever is in the business for the business will always try to give as much as possible for the budget that is available. Because this is just
it. All my budgets are based on real weddings. As in, we quoted the client, we produced the wedding at the end of it. And we can go back and say, did everything go according to plan? Did we overspend somewhere? Where did we have the risk areas? Where do we need to budget more comes the next wedding in order to avoid issues? We do budget analysis. For me, I love Excel. I love my budgets. I really do. And my budgets are very detailed. It goes to, even putting my cable ties and, small things, pins. Every single expense must go into that budget, because I need to make a profit. I need to run a sustainable business in order to continue to do what I do it properly. Now, I set up with a situation where the client comes to me and I share the budget with them based on previous, and I always share the range between what the lowest to the highest, and explaining to the clients that you always have a choice to prioritize one area over the other. What does that mean? You can say entertainment is more important, so you will spend more on entertainment and food, less on styling, whereas for some, styling is absolutely most important, and so it goes. We can talk about ranges, but at the end of the day, having done events consistently over 13 years with over 500 events, I can tell you how much people are going to spend on their wedding. But what I know is that sometimes they're not prepared to hear it. And so I can tell you, you can talk, the client talks to me and they're like, my wedding is this and that's what I want. How many people? I already know the number. I know the range within the first 10 minutes of talking to them. But if I start talking about money straight away, it almost seems as bad taste. How much do you have? That's all I do want to know how much you have, because I want to know if it's even worth having a conversation. I've done this before where I would sit in front of the budgets and I would sit with proposals, because I know for a fact that this is what this client wants. Possible. I know what the numbers, but I cannot bring it lower. I just cannot. And you try, but you know that if you give them a good answer now, you yourself and your business will pay for it later.
Yeah, but if it's not only if it's worth to sit down, but we have to know, maybe just like, let's say, if we can calculate in, like, let's say, food for 500 or for 2,000 per person. You know, you have to know who to approach from your service provider, because this is essential, not maybe to go wrong on that point. And I think also
you lose more clients if you don't ask the question,
Yes.
because if you sit down and actually work out a budget and then it's not to what the client can actually afford, they will immediately turn around and say, well, that's not actually what I can afford, not even knowing what is it that they want to spend, you know.
Yeah.
So that's why
I heard a very good speech recently. It's by American Planner, and I think I have to respect the American industry. I think they are very straightforward, and they just ask, how much have you budgeted for your wedding? And first question, because without knowing that, and we had a big disagreement about it recently on our wedding planner group, because some planners felt like it will be seen like we're out there just for the money. No, but if there is no money, I cannot do anything.
Yes.
We shouldn't even be talking. You know, if I cannot afford a Bugatti or a Ferrari, I don't go and waste anyone's time. I can look at the website and admire a beautiful Ferrari, but I'm not going to go and waste anyone's time. It's the same thing if I'm looking around for a house and I really admire the 20 million rand mansion in Athol, but I'm not going to phone the estate agent, because right now I'm not in the shopping, you know, I don't have the spending power to buy that house. So I can admire it.
I'm absolutely with you.
I aspire to it, but I won't waste anyone's time.
No, and coming from an international perspective, I mean, we in Europe, we work on budgets. So the people come and say, I have 2,000 euro for that. I have 5,000.
The
what can I get?
Usually the different, is posed in a different way. They say, for example, they have like 20,000, 30,000 available and say, this is my rough idea, but what is it that I can get for 20,000, you know? And then you go and run and you will try to make it work as best as you can.
Exactly.
Absolutely. That's what happens with corporates. They phone and they say, we have a launch or we have this and my budget is 20,000. Then it's your job to go and say, okay, and they will say to you, like, I've got 2 hours to give them an answer. I go into my spreadsheets and go, okay, so it's like this number of cocktails, it's this feature, I can make a profit. I'll phone back and say, yes, I can do it. You know, so yes, I agree. In a way with corporates, it's very straightforward. They know how much money they have. They kind of know their brief, and then they leave you as a creative to execute on that vision. They don't meddle and they look at the portfolio and they say, okay, I know that, and you know what you're doing, so I trust you with a vision. I think the problem comes in when we have a client who's on a very strict budget, but they also take a lot of our resources, and they start not trusting you as a creative, and you as a creative just need their trust, in the sense that this is the amount of money that you're giving me. I understand the space. I understand how many people you have, but now leave me to do the best possible thing I can do for you. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle. A lot of clients, private clients, struggle with that trust in creativity.
That is one thing. And why it works with corporates, because they are doing business. And that's what we don't very often not do with private people, or what they don't expect us to do business. And I think this is a very big problem where we all have to change in the future. We have to be more business-like, and we have to talk very frankly to our clients, and not in an offensive way, but also to explain them, you know, and very often, and I want to say, like, maybe we have to have another chat, like another time, because we are already at 1 hour 20. It comes to the same point. What I want to put into this. A lot of clients requesting mock-ups, mock-ups for flowers, mock-ups for everything, for each and everything. And I mean, I have my very own personal opinion about that. I have never, ever in my life, as I work with flowers, done one mock-up. And because I can convince my client, they have to trust in me. And we do online collages and things like that. So we give them not nothing, you know. We give them ideas and mood boards, exactly. And that must be okay, because in the most of the cases, also a mock-up is not properly paid. It's not. And what I'm always saying is it takes completely away the imagination, the beautiful thing that what happens when a bride is walking into a venue and it has tears in their eyes because they first time see their dream has come true. And therefore they don't need to see a table with 5 napkins or 4 napkins on with 4 glasses and a little pot of flowers. They don't need to see that.
I mean, it ties into a different flower scenario, because most of the time the flowers that you're using for that you would be using for your mock-up are not the ones that you would actually be using for the wedding for different reasons. Maybe because the time when you're doing the mock-up is not the time of the wedding. Maybe because it's 6 months before, or 3 months before, or 4 months before the wedding. So the flowers that you would be actually using are not available. And then you have to actually buy much, much more flowers as a florist to make a small table possible. And almost no client would be in the position to say, okay, I'm going to really put the money down for only this one table, although I have maybe so much extra as a florist just to make this one table work for you. And this is, again, because people say, okay, fine, or florists say, I will do a mock-up for you, just because they are afraid they are losing this client. And I think this is also one of the things where a lot of people need to just have much more confidence in the art that they are doing, because each and every one designer is a designer. And I'm also not asking for like a dress. When I go to a dressmaker, make me a dress, you know, like
a paper
dress first, or like show me how the dress will look like. Yes, they will do a sketch, and that's all fine, but they will not put together a dress before they're actually going to do the full dress. So I think this is something where in the whole industry,
I'm not a fan of free mock-ups. I mean, I've never been. If I am, what I would do for my own marketing, I would do styled shoots, in which case I will buy the flowers for the shoot. I'll create beautiful concepts, and to me, that shows my artistry. It shows my design kind of concepts for the year and whatever. Now, every single designer and every single florist would have very different processes. I think what I advocate when I host workshops or mentor someone is always to say, define the process that works for you. So in a sense that if you feel like you want to have a mock-up, please do it. But you can also remember, have an internal mock-up. What we call internal mock-ups is when we do it ourselves. So we set up the tables, we put the decor on, put the flowers, we take it off, you know, especially when you're working on a very big budget and you need to know your orders. You also need to know that you're ordering in a proper way, you're not wasting money. Yes, it does come with experience, because as you're doing more and more and more weddings, you're acquiring your recipes, your spreadsheets are growing, and you draw on that, you know, base of knowledge that you already built over the years. So that does come with experience. So I can spec out the entire wedding without having to do a mock-up, because I have all the formulas already. So like, for example, the last event that I did on the 14th of March, I was invited to do flowers for Black Coffee's luncheon, and they booked me on Friday, and the birthday was on Sunday. There was no time for mock-ups. It's like, okay, here's your formulas, this is your areas, and you try to figure out what you need. You send it to the supplier sends you the flowers, and then you create. And you know what? Can I tell you something? We used, like, I promise you, 98% of my order. It was like perfect. I was very proud of it. I was actually like, I was within my budget, and my order was correct. We did all the areas, and I was really proud of myself for not wasting the flowers and making the profit margins. And it was literally like this. If you're starting off and you're not as experienced, you do need to have probably internal mock-ups in your studio, so you are ordering flowers without wasting flowers for the actual wedding. Okay, so but I have this major problem with having mock-ups, say, at the venue, and then you have this little table set up in this very big room, and it doesn't matter how even your presentation can be really beautiful, it's gonna look really sad just on its own, and the client will always walk away disappointed. They will never see the scale, and it actually makes them more worried.
One second.
And it actually makes them more worried, and this process is not helpful to anyone. So I would say, look at, if you're a designer and you are selling the vision to your client, why don't you look at sketching? Start sketching, start working on your sketching skills. Look at 3D renders, look at other presentational way, mood boards, explanation, get better at explaining the vision to your client. I did one of my biggest budget weddings ever. There was no ways we could do a mock-up because it was 46 lounge pockets over 2 areas or 3 areas. We could not possibly mock up different areas. So the client got a very thick lookbook. There was different explanations, different textures, just different florals. You know, I could never mock that wedding up. It was something that was inside of my mind. I use as many design tools as possible, floor plans, sketches, all of those kind of things. But my client trusted me. They had 100% trust in my design ability to create something wow for them, and we did. So you've got to challenge your clients, but you do have to have a clear process. If you get to adapt to every single client, you are going to be lost. If you have a clear design process and your client understands that design process, then, you know, another thing I have to say, I was going to coordinate a wedding where I was going to have to work with an in-house florist because they don't allow anybody else. They have to use their own. And you know, it was a bit tricky because I didn't want to take over the design process, and it was a bit tricky, but I could see my client was quite hesitant. And if you have an anxious client, then deal with it. Don't say, oh, well, my process says that I will see you for a mock-up the month before your wedding and blah, 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 because it suits you, okay? But if you have an anxious client, talk to them, explain to them. Don't just blow them off with a process. Maybe pick up the phone and address it with them and explain to them the reason why we do it a month before, because we want to show you the exact flowers that will be in season. But if you wish to come and chat to us and look at the decor items and discuss the floor plan, you know, offer them comfort in my flowers and shooting into their anxieties, but you can definitely alleviate some of the stress for them in terms of maybe your process is not working for them.
I think we have to cut it short right now because we get some.
I think so too. I can talk about weddings forever, as you can see.
Yes, maybe we can take another session another day, and we can make topics. Yes. Maybe that is something that we can maybe take from this discussion, because we had Chisala, hello, you also did.
I want one thing, because one thing is I actually want to just touch on is that I'm sorry, this is my landline. Okay, yes. So while Mama's just quickly saying that we're gonna return the call, one thing that I just quickly wanted to check is you said flowers and happiness, and I think this is just one thing I want to end the call with, because I think it's so important. That's why also, we know for us flowers are so important for our happiness, but how what do you connect with flowers and happiness? And I see you cut some beautiful roses from your garden maybe, in the back of you. But
Yes.
what do you connect, and maybe what is your last message for the people out there who are maybe feeling a bit lonely and a bit in distress because they don't know what the situation will be right now? And so just maybe share that.
Okay, so I'll start with COVID-19, and as horrible as the situation is for all of us right now, one thing it has done is that it opened up a conversation such as the one that we're having right now. We are meeting people behind the brands. So the bride who've asked, well, if I like someone's photos, but someone's work, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to afford them. All of a sudden, these are the people who are coming live. They're going on their live chats. They join them, ask them questions. It's the live chats like this where we are connecting and discussing issues that we usually just talk to each other on the phone and maybe not really solving anything, but just maybe offloading our own frustrations. But now we are actually opening up a lot of things, and we invite the clients and our public to please participate, and let's all figure out how can we work together better. Because if you don't like something from our side, then tell us, but let us also be able to tell you what bothers us. And then together we can improve our relationship going forward. So for me, COVID, I'm hoping that this is what we're going to come out on the other side with a lot more better understanding of how to work with each other and how to get the best from each other. Okay, so that's for the COVID side of things. So then on the happiness level, why flowers are amazing. And I mean, we always know that flowers make people smile, but there was actually a psychological study done on the effects of flowers on the brain. And it actually releases happiness hormones, not only just from the happiness levels that the person increases, but the person that gives the flower to another person, they actually, as you know, that there's oxytocin that gets released from the mother to the baby, and, you know, their bond. So flowers also help with oxytocin release in people. So that means when you give someone flowers, you show them your appreciation for them, but they bond to you on a different level. So when people give each other flowers, the brain reacts in the most positive way. And it's actually a physical reaction that goes to the early human brain from hunter-gatherers time, because flowers have always been a part of our existence. And the reason why the happiness levels are so low in South Africa, because we haven't actually been seeing flowers. Okay, it's one of them. It really is one of them. But I heard a psychologist talking recently, and she said they've been studying happiness levels of South Africans in COVID-19. Like, they looked at tweets, they looked at Facebook posts, they looked at, the kind of interaction people are having. And we are very, very unhappy. And she actually said that bringing flowers would help. And just as simple, and we are debating about it because, do flowers spread COVID? So if we were to look at Mother's Day and somehow find a way to bring flowers to my granny who, in a different city, how can I order her flower and make her smile, make her happy? We don't have that option right now. And because people are worried about the way we can spread the virus and do flowers spread virus, but yet I'm looking at other countries in the world and the flower trade continues, the flower shops are open. There's a lot of online training that's happening where, on Zoom call, people are learning how to arrange this arrangement. And there's a trainer who's presenting, they would order the right kind of boxes and those boxes arrive and people are learning flowers. On my own patio, I actually have this lockdown series going. So sometimes people can join me on my patio. So please do, because I literally, my next installation will be out of big tropical leaves. So if you're keen to see it, follow me on Instagram and see when it is. Because I just want people to see that they can do things.
Yes, just hold on, Eve. Tell people, if they want to follow you and your company, just tell them again your Instagram handle and your website. So that they can just have a look.
Yeah, my website needs a bit of updating. I think we all kind of ignored our websites for a while because we were on Instagram and Facebook. So on Instagram, you can follow me on at Splendid Wedding Co. or at EV11, EVIE11. And I will be posting certain like flower related things that you can do in your own home. On my online training academy, I posted home entertainment. It's a free course, so people can actually log in and see how I've created a floating installation on my patio. And I actually give tips like what tools to use. And I created with just leaves that I gathered in my garden. I didn't have flowers, so I had to use leaves. And then I created from the same installation a floral runner, or like a leaf runner for the table. And I showed how to set a table. I actually had to learn that certain things that maybe come easy to some people don't come the same way to other people. So if you have a very analytical brain, just like math may not necessarily come as easier to me as to some of my clients, and they came to me and said, please, can you give me tips how to set a table, how to entertain at home? Like, it's so easy for you and it's so hard for us. And you kind of, when you live and breathe flowers and pretty things and decor, it's easy. It just comes naturally. So you have to learn that sometimes you just need to like really break it down to basics and just help people to bring just a bit of happiness in their own home. And it's not even expensive and it's not even difficult. And you can often use whatever's at your house and still put it on the table in a different way and still have an amazing celebration. It doesn't have to cost a fortune.
It's the beautiful last message. Yes. Thank you so much.
Like this arrangement is from my garden. Everything is from my garden. So we around cut some branches.
It looks like a designer piece for 5 million rand.
Yay!
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise
Can
with
you
us.
imagine we have been talking for 1 hour, 40 minutes and 29 seconds. This was the longest.
And we can still talk until tomorrow.
Now, we will set up another session for all those that are interested. I think we have a lot still to talk and to share, and we would be happy maybe to get input for the next chats. Are you?
And you know what? I really want to invite the public to participate. Don't just watch. Talk to us. Any questions? Let's talk about these issues that we are facing and let's discuss them. This is the good time to bring it all out, put it on the table and discuss it and come up with solutions.
Thank you so much. And thank you so
have
much
also
for the
a final statement. Thank you so much for
appreciating this. So let's chat and be in touch. Thank you, Eve from Splendid Weddings. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Bye.